Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, folks of all stripes, and distinguished guests, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans from a diehard Houston sports fan. I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite diehard Houston podcaster. I'm an actor, improviser, writer, creative multi-hyphenate, and of course, I'm a proud Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. I took some of my senior pictures at the water wall. That's right, that's how Houston I am. You know, I've spent the last decade or so as a comedy writer in Los Angeles, a couple decades now. But, you know, now, after that, I'm podcasting, you know. That's what happens when you hit 10 years out here. You start absent-mindedly calling it the 10 instead of I-10. And the governor shows up to your house and gives you a podcast. Welcome to said podcast. You know, Space Cadet I haven't done my vocal warm-ups. Space Cadet Sports started as a passion project, you know, because most media is infuriating as a die-hard, long-term fan of the Houston Astros. Here, we aren't doom and gloom casual Astros fans, or worse, the national media haters. We love our teams and root them on, but we also want to try to discuss the ins and outs of them without too much homerism. Keyword: try. Welcome, returning listeners, and of course, a huge welcome to new listeners to what my brother calls the Paul Broad Pod Ball Blog. Hey, brother. Shout out to Jesse. Brother Jesse was just on yesterday's podcast. If you're a little behind, go ahead and check that out. Hey, brother. Check out spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience, or the full blog experience depending on your interpretation of my pronunciation there. You know, we're recording this transmission, as always, in sunny Los Angeles, where I'm joined by my co-host and my co-producer, the Roz to my Frasier. Carla, the dog, is here with me. Listeners of the podcast know that she may get on mic from time to time. That's right, she's got the hot takes on this podcast. I've got the cold takes, she's got the hot takes. Let's call the whole thing off. On this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about everything. It's been a while since I've done some podcasts, so we are trying to touch base here, talk about our Houston Rockets and their draft lottery. We're going to talk about our Houston Texans and their schedule dropping. And, of course, we're going to talk about your Houston Astros. Today, specifically, we are going to talk about their bullpen. But before we get to that, of course, we want to wish a good day, mates, to all of our Australian listeners out there. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Hate to brag, but I do it every episode, or almost every episode. As soon as the first podcast was posted, folks, we rocketed up the charts of Australian baseball podcasts, just outside of that top 100. So, you know, we're famous in Australia, so we definitely give a shout out to our Australian listeners. If you know of any Houston fans or any Australians out there, let them know that this is a safe haven for Houston sports with the goofiest guy you know. But let's go ahead and get to it. Let's talk about Houston Rockets, folks. That's right. If you haven't been paying attention, if after the Houston Rockets unceremoniously got dropped from the playoffs, you stopped following the NBA, I understand. I mean, I pretty much did the same thing. We're not going to say that it was because I was busy. We'll just say I was emotional and couldn't do any podcasts the week after the Rockets were bounced from the playoffs. But if you haven't been paying attention, obviously, the playoffs are still going on for some people, for some of y'all. Congratulations if the playoffs are still going for you. But for the rest of us, we had Festivus, or what we more likely should call the NBA draft lottery. The Houston Rockets held the pick from the Phoenix Suns and potentially could have gotten a really good draft pick. So we were watching with great interest. However, what happened was nuts. The Dallas Mavericks, who had a 1.8% chance to win the draft lottery, won the draft lottery. And, if that's already a little fishy, that smells funky for sure. But what makes that want everybody on the internet to put their tinfoil hats on is that Luka Doncic was ridiculously traded to the Los Angeles Lakers at the trade deadline in a move that made no sense to anyone outside of Nico Harrison, the general manager for the Dallas Mavericks, who had to defend his move. Very easily could have been ownership laying down the law, but Nico Harrison had to wear it, and he wore that L. He wore a big, broad L on his chest for quite some time. Nico Harrison is branded with the L scarlet letter for all of you Nathaniel Hawthorne nerds out there. That's right, not only am I goofy, I'm nerdy. You came for the puns, but you got English literature references instead. Nico Harrison, is going to wear that L for quite some time. But to help with that L, the NBA seemed to have just packaged a number 1 pick to the Dallas Mavericks for being so kind to give the LA Lakers a superstar that they desperately needed. And it's times like this where I try to be reasonable here. I try not to be too reactionary or too hot takey. I try not to dive headfirst into the toxic cesspool that can be hot take sports podcasting, just recklessly saying outrageous things for ratings. However, this smells fishy, folks. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's 100% fixing in the NBA, but when you have been an NBA fan as long as I have, when you have seen the exploits of David Stern, and when there have been some things that just don't quite smell right in the era of Adam Silver, I'm going to say something doesn't seem right. And if this was just happenstance, if this was just coincidental, the league looks like they're fixing things, and the fact of the matter is a lot of us we're looking for fairness in sports, but the reality of the situation is it is a business. It's a business run by businessmen who are willing to do things and put a finger on the scale, just put their thumb on that scale to make sure things go in their favor. So I'm not going to sit here and once again, I'm finding some room in the middle. That seems to be what I do. You get one extreme and you see where that lies, and you see the other extreme, and generally I'll be somewhere in the middle of those extremes. But I'm definitely leaning towards collusion. I'm leaning towards this is something the league did to save face for the Mavericks, kind of help them out for doing a favor for a big media team. I don't know. Once again, I'm saying this with a huge grain of salt. This is a comedy podcast. I like to say things for with a little bit of a level of distance and disassociating from it. But this is how I feel. I am actually being pretty earnest here and saying that something just doesn't smell right. But I'm not going to sit here and say 100% collusion, everything is fixed. It either proves that things are shady in the NBA, or we 100% live in a simulation. I mean, I don't know. There's so many crazy things happening. This is one of the wildest, most bonkers things to happen. The math just doesn't math, as the kids say. The math ain't mathin'. It ain't mathin', folks. So, I'm just saying, it was a bad time for Houston Rockets fans. The Dallas Mavericks got the first pick. The San Antonio Spurs got the second pick. The Houston Rockets ended up with the 10th pick, which is probably around the place that they were most likely statistically going to pick. But when everybody else's stats goes in a different direction, we were hoping we would get some of that help too. It's like, hey, we might not have been Dallas, but we live close by. What if, is there any trickle down fixonomics you have for us, Mr. Silver? Obviously, I don't, there is no proof of collusion. There is no proof of fixing. This is all just based off of how weird this whole story has felt. So, in truth, folks, unless there is any proof of this, it is really just a tinfoil hat sports podcast, fun little gossip. This is not news. So what we're looking at is that when LA has a trading partner that helps them find relevancy again, generally that team gets helped out by the NBA with a draft pick that seems to be statistically hard to reach. So we'll just leave that there. I do think that there's a history of helping teams in the draft lottery, but we just don't have the proof. And until David Stern or these NBA executives actually start talking about it, we have nothing except our tinfoil hats to help give us solace. So with that being said, folks, we are looking to potentially trade here, or the Houston Rockets are looking to potentially trade. Now, whether that is trading for a new superstar to help their offense actually find a way to score points in playoff games in the crunch time, in the crunch, as they say on the Mighty Boosh, until we have that, we are looking to trade. Obviously, we didn't have that last against the series with the Warriors. So is it going to come from a veteran trade, or are we going to maybe trade away our pick and look a little more towards the future and maybe get a veteran piece? Are we going to get somebody like Giannis Antetokounmpo? Are we going to get Kevin Durant? I feel like there's been mixed reporting out there. It seems like Kevin Durant really likes the Rockets, but perhaps the Rockets aren't too high on Durant. In the past, I've said I don't know how I feel about Durant because we're looking at we're hoping for somebody that helps the team long term. The word on the street is if Kevin Durant is going to be traded, he does want an extension. So therefore, if Kevin Durant is open to be traded to Houston and he's wanting to be traded to a team with an extension, it seems as if Kevin Durant could be on the Rockets for a couple seasons if he's traded to them. However, is that the piece we want? Or do we want to kind of, go after Giannis? If we get Giannis, a player like Giannis is going to require a lot of pieces. If we get Giannis, we might very well could lose Alperen Şengün. If you're trading for someone like Giannis, you're going to need to give away a lot of talent. I don't see the Bucks not wanting Alperen Şengün. I don't think after that last playoff performance by Jalen Green, they'd be fine with a Jalen Green-centered trade. And Jalen Green, I've said in the past, Jalen Green could easily turn his narrative around here. I don't even want to say career. His career, it didn't really take a shot. The narrative of him being an elite scorer and the main scorer on your team definitely has taken a hit. So, I think Jalen Green could turn it around, but I don't know if he is going to be the main piece of a trade for somebody like Giannis right now. So if we get somebody like Giannis, would you be okay with giving up Alperen Şengün and a lot of picks and some young players? Or would you want to give up a little less and maybe get Kevin Durant? Or should we package this 10th pick we just got with potentially some other picks and make a trade that maybe we're not getting Durant, maybe we're not getting Giannis, but we bring in another piece, a piece like Dylan Brooks, a piece like Fred VanVleet, somebody that will help out with veteran leadership, someone who's been there before, but can maybe really kind of help coach this team and help them find buckets. Somebody like Steven Adams. We those pieces in this last iteration of the Rockets really helped get them to where they got last season. Now we're just looking to grow. Let me know, folks. Let me know what type of trade you're looking for the Rockets to make this offseason. With that being said, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with some Texans talk.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town rebel, Space Cadet Sports.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Space Cadets Sports Podcast. I'm already tripping over my words. That's how you know we're back, folks. We're here to talk about some Houston Texans. They just released their 2025 schedule. So let's take a quick look at what that is. Right now, we're looking at a start away that we're starting at the LA Rams in week 1. Definitely maybe a game that I could go out there and check out a Rams game, go watch a Rams Texans game. I've done that before. I've gone to see a Rams game. I've gone to see a Chargers game when the Texans weren't in town to play them. Maybe it's time I go back and check it out. We'll be in touch to let you know what my week 1 plans are. But Sunday, September 7th, the Texans start off their week against the Rams. Week 2, Monday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's going to be a home game. And then back on the road, the Houston Texans for week 3 on September 21st are going to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they made some moves this offseason. They might be the team that gives the Texans the biggest run for their money in the division this season. Obviously, that's a very early season prediction, but that's kind of what the consensus has been. The Jacksonville Jaguars have made a lot of moves, so we'll have to see what that team, that revamped team looks like pretty early in the season. Our first divisional foe there in week 4. Sunday, we have Sunday, September 28th. I apologize. I was like, what am I trying to say? The 28th, Sunday. Obviously, most of these games are going to be on a Sunday. We have the Tennessee Titans coming to NRG Stadium. Really hoping to do some damage against the Titans this season. I don't know it. Maybe it's just been all the Oilers imagery and all that stuff. I don't want the Titans to ever beat the Texans again. That would make me very happy. So week 4, definitely looking for a win here at the podcast. Week 5, the Baltimore Ravens, week 5, Sunday, October 5th, the Texans are traveling to play the Ravens, and then an early bye week for the Texans in week 6. So definitely, that Ravens team is gonna, probably, arguably the biggest game in the first part of the season there for the Texans. So then we get a bye week, and then Monday Night Football on week 7, October 20th. That's going to be against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Then for week 8, the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday, October 26th, are going to play the Texans at home. And continuing that homestand for week 9, another NFC West team, we have the Denver Broncos playing the Texans Sunday, November 2nd for week 9. And continuing that homestand, into week 10. Get nice and comfy at NRG Houston. Go ahead and warm those seats up for late October, early November. Week 10 is the second game against Jacksonville, this time at home, Sunday, November 9th. Moving into week 11, get that early bye week, means a long gauntlet towards the end of the season. We have the Tennessee Titans in mid-November, Sunday, November 16th here for week 11. That one is at Tennessee, if I didn't mention that earlier. And for week 12, back at home, back to the flip-flop. Thursday Night Football, that's going to be against the Buffalo Bills. Should be a huge game. We have the Bills, we have the Ravens, definitely playing some big AFC opponents. Week 13 on the road against the Colts on Sunday, November 30th, and week 14, a big one here, talking about AFC teams that are going to make some noise this season. We're looking to really showcase that this Texans team can run with the big boys. Week 14 is going to be a big one. Sunday, December 7th, against the Chiefs at at the Chiefs. So that's going to be a big game. Week 15 at home against the Arizona Cardinals, Sunday, December 14th. Week 16, we have the Raiders coming into town, Sunday, December 31st. Vegas Raiders is playing the final. Sorry, I shouldn't say the final home game. That it isn't the final home game. I forgot about Week 18. How could I? Playing the second to final game at NRG Stadium, Sunday, December 21st. Week 17 is TBD, not the opponent. We are playing the LA Chargers, of course, but the day and the time are to be determined. We got that flex scheduling there. That will depend on so many factors, but I don't know. We'll see how the Chargers do. We'll see what the Texans are looking like, but I have a feeling that won't be prime time there, but we'll see. Week 18 is another TBD. We got another flex scheduling there. That's going to be at NRG against the Colts, and that could be a big game for the division, division standings and stuff like that. Obviously, we're saying the Jacksonville Jaguars might be the bigger opponent in this season for the division, but obviously a divisional opponent for the last game, that should be fun. That should be big. Obviously, the Texans are playing some big AFC opponents based off of what we're anticipating these teams to project as in the Bills, in the Ravens, in the Chiefs. But we really don't know. Some of these other teams could surprise us. We're really not sure who's going to take a step forward, who's going to take a step back. So this, we could be looking at some of these opponents and circling them and really find out that we're kind of looking at the wrong opponents, reading the tea leaves a little long. This week 6 bye is definitely not something I'm like crying foul over or anything, but an early bye. We're going to have to hope for some good health for the Texans towards the end of the season. Hopefully, they're playing strong, they're playing with a lot of momentum, and they have good health. Let me know what you think, folks. Let me know what games you're kind of circling, if they're kind of the opponents that I've been looking at, or if you think I've completely got it wrong, you have some other opponents. Let me know if you're going to that LA Rams game. I don't know if I am yet, but just let me know. I want to know how you're doing. But with that being said, we're going to take one more quick break. We'll be back to talk some Houston Astros. We'll be right back.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Welcome back, y'all. We are happy to talk some Houston Astros baseball here, folks. First and foremost, the Astros, they have won 2 of the last series that they played, and they are going to a big divisional rivalry series starting tonight. I'm very excited about it. I'm going to be all decked out in my Stros gear. Carla's going to wear her hat. We are going to be watching this series with great interest, and I know you will too. But the beginning of the Lone Star series is here. We're ready to win yet another silver boot against the little brothers to our north, the South Oklahoma Rags. So we're very excited about that here at the podcast. Tonight's matchup is going to be Hunter Brown Diesel playing against Jacob deGrom. That's going to be fantastic. I'm getting the popcorn ready for that. That's going to be such a fun pitching match. And then the next game, Apple TV, I believe that's our Friday night game there on Apple TV, is going to be Lance McCullers Jr. versus Nathan Eovaldi. That's going to be, while we're watching this first one tonight with great interest, I'm watching this one with the same amount of interest, but a little bit more dread. We're hoping that Lance McCullers Jr. Has a great game. Not just, I'm not watching it with dread because I don't think he's capable of having a great game, but just based off of how his last start went, based off of the reaction to it, Truly, if you think the way Astros fans treat Astros players is bad, wait till I tell you about how other teams and other fan bases treat the Astros players. You know, I'm not trying to belittle death threats in the way McCullers was treated, but it's just some of these opposing fan bases can be a little gnarly and a little more than mean-spirited is fair to say. So, I'm hoping that Lance McCullers can go out there and really have just a great rebound pitching game. If he kind of is pitching closer to the way he was pitching in Detroit, I'm not saying he's going to be perfect, or I'm calling for him to be perfect. What I want him to do is just go out there and compete and work through some of those struggles. If he can give us 5 innings and 3 to 4 runs, I'll take it. Obviously, I'm not saying that's going to help us win the game, but if that's what he's capable of, if he can just go out there and eat some innings, generally be competitive and work on, have some numbers that aren't too lopsided so that he can not just point to, I'm executing things the way I'm hoping to execute them, but can point to some statistical success. I think that would really be helpful to the confidence of Lance McCullers and to just the whole narrative around this story being more positive. I want to write something about his bounce back. I want to come on the podcast and say something about his bounce back. I don't want to come on here and say something about how terrible people can be in sports. Remember, folks, this is a distraction to all the terrible things. This isn't supposed to be another terrible thing. Likewise, it isn't healthy for this to be your surrogate for other bad feelings where you don't analyze those other things in your life and you just carry all of those bad feelings over and you let it out on baseball. That isn't healthy either, folks. Get some therapy, y'all. Cálmate and go to therapy. For the love of God, please do that. In the third game in the series, we are going to have Ronel Blancura is going to be out there against Tyler Mahle, I believe. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anything. I always mispronounce a name. I never do it disrespectfully, but I do like to apologize in advance if I am being disrespectful. In the last game versus the Texas Rags, it'll be Jack Leiter for the Rags going up against TBD. That's right, TBD from the Houston Astros. And let's talk about some pitching real quick before we wrap up this podcast. Obviously, we talked about Hayden Wesneski in the previous podcast, but one little thing to mention that happened while we were watching the game yesterday, I believe it was yesterday at least, is the broadcast basically said, Todd Callis, I believe, it was either Callis or Blummer, but I believe it was Callis that said pretty much that Hayden Wesneski is going to be out for the season. We were talking about how he definitely wasn't used to this amount of mileage on his arm. He's, getting stretched out. He wasn't pitching this much for the Cubs. And folks, it looks like he's injured. They said, I believe it was, I don't have it in front of me, but somebody said, I think it was Joe Espada, it might have been Dana Brown. I apologize. Don't take me at my word for this, but somebody in the organization said that the inflammation was so bad that they couldn't even see anything in the imaging when they had the MRI done. So they just were waiting for the swelling to go down to take a look at Hayden Wesneski's arm. And folks, it doesn't look good. It seems like the insider information, the rumors in the organization is that Hayden Wesneski's done for the season. That's a huge blow. Obviously, we weren't thinking Hayden Wesneski was going to come out here and have an all-star season. However, we were hoping that he could shore up that back of the starting rotation with Spencer Arrighetti. And now Arrighetti and Wesneski are both injured. So that back end of the rotation has a lot of rookies. We've had Colton Gordon have a start. We've had Ryan Gusto have a start. We have now had AJ Bluebaugh have a start. There might be a point where Logan Van Wy even has a start. We're going to have, once again, a lot of AAA pitching and a lot of unheralded pitching help the Houston Astros in the back end of that starting rotation. Obviously, I'm not too stressed out about that. Right now, it's a bad time because we have such a long stretch of games. We're really hoping to have a 6-man rotation, and it's hard to do when 3 of them are rookies. It doesn't. You're like, okay, well, we can't have a 6-man rotation if the 6 only get us, 3 of the 6 only get us 3 or 4 innings, because now we don't have a bullpen. We have one less bullpen arm because one of them is a starter. So, we're kind of in a tricky situation here. We could get the Dana Brown pitching carousel open again, where we have a lot of movement, a lot of relievers coming up and down in the Houston Astros organization. We will have to see. But we're really looking at Ryan Gusto. We're looking at Colton Gordon. We're looking at these guys to play beyond their capabilities a little bit right now. They're still obviously making adjustments and learning to adjust to some things at the major league level, but we're hoping that they could just hold down the fort. And in the meantime, Framber Valdez going 8 innings, we need that. Ronel Blanco having probably his best game since his April Fool's no-hitter, striking out 11 batters. We need that out of Ronel. We need Diesel to go out there and give us as close to a complete game as possible. We need the front 3 of this rotation to just go out there and shove and be a 3-headed monster for us as we figure out the back end of this rotation. We need Spencer Arrighetti coming back. We need, Christian Javier. He's been throwing bullpens. We're hoping that Christian Javier can come back sooner than later, but also healthy and not in a way that is going to get him back on the IL. But the biggest thing here, this is where sports talk meets, a little bit of humanity here. The biggest thing here is we really need Lance McCullers Jr. to return to form. And right now, it looks like he needs some adjustments. So, the thing is, when you criticize players, when you go on here and you talk about sports, I think criticizing players and saying your opinions, that's a huge part of sports broadcasting, a huge part of sports journalism, podcasting. We won't always call podcasting journalism. Of course, here, not on this show, we're not trying to say it's the same. But at the end of the day, when you're giving opinions about people, when it's in some kind of way, people want to know your opinions. We share our opinions. It's talking about sports is camaraderie, right? The biggest thing is you don't do it in a dehumanizing way. Do it in a way in which you could criticize that person to their face just a little bit, or at least if you're joking about them, that you can make that joke to their face. When you do things that dehumanize people, that's a huge problem. And that makes people think that they can give away death threats and stupid shit like that. Apologies for the language, but it's infuriating, So when I'm out over here criticizing or saying things like we need Lance McCullers Jr. to pitch to his previous form, we're not trying to be cruel here. We're just trying to analyze the game, right? So that's that's why it's like I feel bad being critical of somebody that's going through some things, but that all I'm trying to say is that we're saying it from a baseball perspective, and very much the man Lance McCullers Jr. We're rooting for him to be able to do this, and if he can't do this, honestly, I'm still going to love Lance McCullers Jr. This guy gave the gave the city of Houston so much. He gave the Astros so much. I mean, I'm really hoping for his sake that we can figure this out, because Lance McCullers Jr. doesn't want to go back on the IL or have to go to rehab somewhere else, or he's at a point of his career where if he's not pitching well, it would be a phantom injury. And I don't think that would do a lot for Lance McCullers' confidence. Obviously, it wouldn't do well for anybody's confidence. We're not rooting for that. We're rooting for him to figure it out, make those adjustments. And those adjustments, I'm not looking for Lance McCullers Jr. to win the Cy Young this year. I'm looking for him to find some return to form, and for him to do that hopefully in a way that will help the team be able to compete in these games instead of having a tougher outing like he did last time. I think he can be a competitive starting pitcher as he's figuring it out, and we're calling for him to do so. But we're doing it with love, we're doing it with compassion, and we're doing it in a way that we want to remind people out there on the internet that these athletes are humans too. The people coming out here and sharing their opinions are humans too. Everybody out here is for the most part doing their best and trying to give you entertainment. And your response to that a lot of times is hate and anger. So just calmate, be reasonable, be calm, think about the golden rule. We're going to take it to the golden rule, folks. Don't do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And remember to be kind out there, folks. We are excited about this 4-game series against our little brothers. Let us know what you think, folks. I am going to call it right now. I am going to say that the Houston Astros are going to go out there. They're going to shove. They're going to win 3 games out of 4. A little bit bullish. A little bit of a homer take, I know, but I believe it, folks. Let me know what you think. And that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We appreciate it. Please hit those buttons for us. Like, rate, review, subscribe, share, bop it, kick it, skip it, smash it. Hit all of those buttons for me. We are a small podcast, and we only go as far as our listenership takes us. We're supported by listeners like you. So please listen to every episode. Like, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this on. And please share with a Houston fan or an Australian in your life. Give us those 5-star ratings, y'all. Thank you so much. If you'd be so kind, also check us out on Substack. That's right, spacecadetsports.substack.com. For just the low price of your email address, you can get every podcast, every meme dump, and so many articles emailed directly to you for free. Or if you're like me, get the Substack app, search Space Cadet Sports, say that you want notifications instead of emails, and you have a nice handy dandy Space Cadet Sports app on your phone. Check that out too. I try to keep so much stuff available for free. I think I've only done one behind the paywall post so far this whole season. So please go ahead and check that out. There's so much content for you. And if you'd be so kind and want to support me, you can check out Premium. That'd be great, honestly. If you want to just let me know your opinion, you can leave a comment there on the blog. You can reach out on social media at spacecadetsports.bsky.social on Blue Sky or at Space Cadet Sports on Instagram. Let me know what you think, or you can just leave me a voicemail. That's right. If it isn't too crazy, it could even make the podcast. That's speakpipe.com/spacecadetsports so that you could just call in, leave a voicemail, let me know your take. Or if you just need more comedy, the goofiness is why you're here. You can find me personally at Paul Salazar Jr. on social media, making jokes, memes, art, podcasts, and so much more at Paul Salazar Jr. on all social media platforms, or at paulsalazarjr.bsky.social on Blue Sky. paulsalazarjr.net is the website, because I'm nothing but net, where you can find my other Substack, all of my writing, so much more about me, and all that nonsense if you're nasty. You can find the merch on the website as well. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos Houston.